Fine. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the webinar series Spectrum of Life that is conducted by OICO Essence. Through this series, we are trying to cover various topics that are based on biodiversity and its conservation. And these will be taken by all researchers as well as some professionals. Something about OICO Essence. Orchesons have been conducting environment education activities from almost 5 years now. These activities include workshop, seminar, as well as nature trails and nature camps. Basically, we try to provide the scientific knowledge in simple language so that we can reach to the general public. Today's topic is actually today is the second talk of the series, which is based on grasses, introduction, economical and ecological importance. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Mm, Okay, so throughout this session, it will be led by Dr. Alok. He'll be talking about grasses, their introduction, ecological and economical importance. Dr. Alok Sorge has completed his PhD in grasses of Odisha, that is from Botanical Survey of India, Hyderabad. He has also completed his postdoctoral research on taxonomy of genus Themida and allied genera in India. That too is from Botanical Survey of India, Pune. Currently, he is working as documentation assistant in Rajiv Gandhi Regional Museum of Natural History in Savai Madhopur. Actually, that's a tremendous work in such a small age, Alok.
Thank you.
And over to you now.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Gavi. Thank you, Dr. Shreya, for giving this opportunity. And thank you, Oiko Essence, for creating this opportunity to share our research experience. I've attended its first talk also. It was very interesting. It shown that how one should be dependent, self-dependent, growing some very common vegetables in our home. So I'll be talking on grasses. It's belong to family poaceae, which actually a lot of or like all the human beings from thousands of years are depend on them, whether it's a food or it's cultural practices or rituals. So it's very important and very economical and ecological important uh, plant group. So I'll be talking about its economic importance, its diversity and origin, its morphology, general morphology, and its ecological importance. So all the millets or cereals, right from rice, wheat, jowar, bajra, they all are nothing but grasses. So rice, we all know it's very important, and for the everywhere in India, it is eaten either mostly cooked rice or rotis is made or kheer is made in some part of India. So basically, rice is basically one species, that is Oryza sativa, which is cultivated all over Asia and eaten all over world. But in Africa, there's one more species of rice, that is Oryza glaberrima. And Oryza sativa, they have two varieties, that is indica and one is japonica. So japonica is basically grown in China, Japan, and other Southeastern countries, whereas variety indica, it's grown in it's mostly it's grown in the Indian subcontinent. We have indica, which I said that it is grown in all over subcontinent. It has many cultivars, basically, like basmati rice in northern India, or in western India we have kolam rice, or uh, Indrayani rice, or there's a lot of variations. Again, Eastern India we have Govind Bhog. So these are all cultivars. So all these cultivars are basically, at one point of history, we had around 100 and 1,000 of such cultivars grown all over Indian subcontinent, right from Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, even in Pakistan. But with advanced technology and hybrid rice variety, we have lost around 90% of its cultivar, and we have only 10,000 species, which is accession in National Rice Research Institute. Apart from Oryza sativa, there is one more species of grass, Oryza, that is Oryza rufipogon, which is grown, which is not cultivated, but it actually grows as a weed in paddy field or in wild. So this is in many part of India. It has been collected and eaten, and it is in Maharashtra. It is called Dev Bhat. It is served as, in many places. It is served and eaten in many religious festivals. So next is wheat. Again, wheat is basically, the wheat plant is from Mediterranean region, but in Indian subcontinent as early as 6,500 BC, we started cultivating wheat, and we have different type of in different ways it is being eaten, whether it's roti or bread, or even pizza based. So we have a lot of cultivars again here in this crop also. uh, Apart from cereals and pulses, cereals like rice and wheat, we have maize, which is actually very recently came to India in cultivation. Recently, as such, around 500 years ago. It is basically a Central American plant. Apart from that, we have a lot of millets like jawar, or it is called sorghum bicolor. Again, its plant came outside India. It is from African origin, but domesticated around like 7,000 to 8,000 BC in Indian subcontinent. It is a very good substitute for someone want to replace wheat in their, because it doesn't have, it has very less quantity of gluten in it. And as we know that there is a lot of people has started developing gluten intolerance, so this can be a very good substitute. It is, plus it's very nutritive. uh, Apart from health, it is also very ecologically very important, ecologically very beneficial, because grown in semi-arid region of India, like in Maharashtra, it is grown in Marathwada region, or in Karnataka or Telangana region, even in Rajasthan, it is grown. So unlike our paddy, which requires a lot of water, it requires very less water, and it is grown in specifically in rainy season. And this crop doesn't need cooler climate, like unlike again wheat. So it can be so this all this millets, whether it's jawar or bajra, it can be a good substitute for our main cereals, which like mostly people are depend on these two cereals. So again, bajra, as I said, it's again it came from Africa. Very nutritive. Gluten content is very less. It's grown in semi-arid region, but the problem is very heavy to digest. So it is recommended to eat in uh, winter season and not in a warmer season, because it will create stomach upset. So apart from that, we have ragi. In Marathi, it is called nachni, or finger millet in English. So most of the like North Indian people in North Indian plains, they doesn't know this crop because it is not grown there. This crop is mostly grown in hills of uh, South India, even in Maharashtra, Central India, and also in the foothills of Himalayas and northeastern countries, northeastern states. Again, it's a superfood. It's gluten free, doesn't have gluten, so someone and have a good amount of fibers, which actually helps in uh, uh, weight loss. It is rich in iron and calcium, so it's a very good crop, very good food for iron and calcium deficiency. So apart from this three crop, three millets, we have one more. It's called Banyard millet. In Marathi, it is called Bhagar, or in English, it's called Varat ke Chawal. It is also used, is made as a rice form. Very interesting, again, crop. So all these millets, what I told, uh, it's now a lot of dietitians and a lot of nutrition experts, they are recommending to switch our main like staple food, rice and wheat, to all these millets. In fact, there was in the 90s, in 19, precisely in 1995, there was Maharashtra government started one very like very progressive and very innovative scheme, that is called, that time it was called Junka Bhakar Kendra. Bhakar is what in Maharashtra it is called roti, for all this made from all this millet, jawar or bajra or nachani. So, and junka is something which is prepared from besan or chickpea flour. So uh, this basically started uh, for uh, giving employment and giving serving people cheaper amount of food, but unknowingly they were promoting millets. But uh, as we know, we in India there's a lot of schemes which runs for some good amount of time, but eventually it has to be closed in 2007. But right now, a lot of state governments like Rajasthan, or even or Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, now they are promoting uh, to cultivate and to subsidize millets production, and they are giving away in the rations also in subsidized rate. So apart from this millets, we have many more grains which are used in various purposes. Like barley, we have barley which is used made in sattu. It's used in making whiskey also. Hops are used in making beers. We know oats. Oats are eaten. Uh, a lot of people are eating this oats in breakfast, and also it is used in fodders. There is Sataria italica, which is also called as a foxtail millet, then kodo millet, porso millet. Then there's a jobsters, little millets. This is all kind of millets. At some point of time, it is grown and cultivated in tribal areas of India, and right now it is kind of forgotten by tribals also. So another very important and economically important crop is sugarcane, which gives us sugar and also industrial alcohol. So the problem with this crop is it is a water thirsty crop. So the country like India, where we face severe shortage of water in summer time, it is actually, we have to think that what we need to find a substitute for this sugar cane. Mm, uh, After that, there's a bamboos. We have incredible diversity of bamboos in India. We have around 50 species of more than 50 species of bamboos used in various purposes. It was uh, around 70 to 55 million year ago where the grasses started evolving. At same time, point of time, the earth has faced many changes, land use changes, like there was a lot of tectonic shift, there was plate movements, there was a lot of earthquakes were happening. Because of that, there was a lot of space created for the grasses. At same point of time, rather after few million year ago, uh, as we know, dinosaurs started extinct, and here it has mammals got chance to colonize entire earth. So primitive mammals are known to be arboreal. So they came. So as dinosaurs got extinct, they moved down in ground surface in this huge grasslands, and they multiplied and they evolved into many more species. So that's why it's always the evolution of grasses and evolution of mammals are is pretty much very parallel. But eventually, there was recent studies, recent fossils discovery from Burma, which is in amber encase specimen, which is around 100 billion year ago. The researchers have realized there is something spikelet which is maybe of grass, but there's no consensus on it that which species of grass it is, or whether it's a grass or maybe someone close relative of it. So it's a pretty much big family. We have grasses family, Poaceae. It is around there around 12 subfamilies, 52 subtribes, tribes, and there are many more subtribes. Uh, so total number of grasses in world around 12,000, and around belonging to 768 genera. It is one of the fifth largest angiosperm family in the world. In India, it is represented with around 1,300 species belonging to 261 genera, of which we have incredible diversity and endemism in India. We have around 315 species and 14 genera endemic strictly to India. So grasses are they are covered all over world, and they occupy around 20% of land area. This grasslands are divided into four types mainly: prairie, then steppe, then pampas, and savanna grasslands. In Indian subcontinent, in India, we have most of the part of India is covered with the savanna grasslands. So the one studies in 1973 by Dhadab Gao and Shankar Narayan, they have classified this grassland covered tribe into five main types. But we have more than that, and I will show you. I'll try to show you some of them. So this is one which you will see in northern Western Ghats, particularly in Maharashtra, uh, where the species composition is pretty much different. The species found here are basically Pseudanthus and Acanthium, and we have this Carvi or Strobilanthus species growing among them. Then comes Eastern Ghats in Orissa. The mountain top grassland is look like this. in Eastern Ghats. They all comprise with trypogons. Very interesting, again, very interesting grass group. Then there's a typical habitat or typical landscape in Deccan Peninsula, where it is most of the time uh, of year it is dry because scanty rainfall. Species composition also varies hugely, but mostly there's a heteropogon or aristida found in this type of vegetation, and trees like acacia and a lot of euphobias are found in this landscape. Then there's high altitude grasslands, also called as the Shola grasslands, found in the Western Ghats of Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. So this again very unique grasslands type, and in this pocket, as you see in this on the screen, you can see there is evergreen patches, and this is a very it's a herb for a lot of endemic species. It has a high endemism, the species found here. So there's one more again coastal ecosystem. So a lot of sandy coasts are covered with this grass, this type of grass called uh, spinifex. Then in Konkan region of Maharashtra, Karnataka, and also in Kerala, where the low altitude hills are very close to sea coast, and these hills are again covered with many such grasses. They forms a very unique ecosystem, and with the high endemism, there are many species of grasses where you can find high endemism. This is a typical scene of a riverine ecosystem. The grass growing here, it's very much high, very tall. As you can see, a man standing on this boat. So it's a much more taller grasses. It's called reed grass, or its scientific name is Phragmatus. It forms a mat, and it floats on river, and it give a very good habitat for fishes for breeding. Then this is a typical grassland in a semi-arid region of Rajasthan and Gujarat, where the composition of grasslands are uh, Sancharus and Aristida. Uh, the huge landscapes are covered with this type of a grassland, and lot of pastoral communities are depend for grazing of their livestock. Again, very important grass species, Panicum turgidum. It's grown in a deep desert, and it supports life, many life of deserts in it. So coming to the morphology, it has very simple morphology. It has a root, it has stem, it's called culm, then it has a leaf, then its inflorescence, somewhat it look like this. They have hundred and thousands of spikelets in it, and spikelets contain several number of florets, that is flower, male flowers or hermaphrodite flowers in them. So the culms are basically divided into nodes and internodes. So from internodes, there's a leaf sheets coming and leaf sheet covered partially or entirely internodes. Then leaf blade is exposed to open for photosynthesis purpose. This leaf blade is often covered with the silica deposition. It's also called as the phytoliths. So coming to inflorescence type, there's a huge diversity, incredible diversity in their structure. Like you seen on a screen, it's called a digitate type. It's like a uh, uh, finger on our hand. That's why it's called a digitate inflorescence. Then there's a panicle inflorescence. Then there's a compound panicle where the racemes are enclosed in uh, spates and spatioles. Then there's a racemes, simple racemes type. And then there's a spike where the spikelets are sessile and subsessilely arranged on the main rachis. Then spikelets, as the number of species and number of diversity we see in the grasses, we have incredible diversity in shape, size, structure, color of grasses. So yeah, you can see many such type of spikelets, and this beauty can be seen only in lens or in microscope. So this is how the spikelet look like of grass. So it has glooms, lower gloom, then upper gloom. It has a lemma and palea. It is called florate. Inside this florate, there is flowers, either male flower or hermaphrodite flowers. This is again a upper lemma or upper florate, where uh, this upper lemma have a on it, and the main purpose of on is to disperse seeds for the seed dispersal. As I said, again, lemma used incredible diversity in lemma structure also. So in some species, they are in 3 number. In many of the species, they are in single in number. Uh, so this is what the flowers of grasses look like. Very simple. So this is the main flower. Uh, it consists of from one number of stamen to 3 to 6 number of stamens, and this is a female flower or called as a pistil. Uh, it this is ovary, and this is a style, and this is a stigma. It has a feathery stigma because uh, the pollination in grasses are occurred is happen with air. It's air pollination. So and it's hardly 1 or 2 hours. So whenever the pollen's flown, so the stigmas, feathery stigma is useful to keep hold of this pollens. And because of short uh, life of pollens, that's why uh, grass flowers, they produce more number of flowers. Like caryopsis, again, caryopsis are seed. Uh, they are also like spikelets. They have incredible diversity, come in every shape and size. And this caryopsis or seed are basically what we eat, rice or wheat or jawar. All these are nothing but caryopsis. So grasslands. So coming to its ecological importance, grasslands have incredible has given incredible ecosystem services in term of soil conservation, in term of carbon fixation, which ultimately very helpful for carbon sequestration for climate change purpose. But there's a usual misconception in India that this grasslands are nothing but the wasteland or degraded land formed because of deforestation, and it need to be reforest or any afforestation scheme comes in grassland, but it is not like that. It's very harmful to reforestation in grasslands, because grasslands is very much a forest type. It supposed very unique flora and fauna, and grasses or animals or even other than grasses, many angiosperms are evolved millions of years. Uh, they have made adaptation in their roots or in their structures to get adapt in this type of ecosystem. So as I said, apart from economical importance, there is ecological importance also. It's a primary producer for the lot of herbivores animals like samba, deer, elephants, and uh, many more herbivores. It's also supports many endangered species, endangered and threatened species like Great Indian Bustard, Gerodon cursus, black buck. So here it is Great Indian Bustard, which is found in grassland ecosystem of Rajasthan and in Maharashtra and Karnataka. They are extremely rare. They are only 150 in number. Its rarity is directly depend on the shrinking of grasslands cover in India. So apart from Great Indian Bustard, we have Lesser Phalorican, just found in a grassland, again, a critically endangered species found in Madhya Pradesh. Then there's the Indian cursor, which is found in northern grasslands. Then Chinkara, again, a grassland species found all over semi-arid or arid region of India. Then blackbird, again, very important grassland species. Nilgiri thars, their habitat is limited to the Shola grasslands in Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Apart from all these animals, there are many more angiosperm species which find their habitats in grassland ecosystem or grass wherever the grass grows. In fact, this newly described species of Brachystelma, this is a Brachystelma mahendragiriensis. We discovered it from Orissa, and this is Penchylconensis, Brachystelma penchylconensis, which is we discovered from Andhra Pradesh. We discovered this beautiful angiosperm flower just because we were studying grasses of that places. We were collecting grasses, and that's why we stumble upon this beautiful flower. This is another group of plants, Ceropegia. This is Ceropegia attenuata, which is found in Konkan region of Maharashtra. It is found. It is again grown in a grassy hill slopes. Apart from Brachystelma and Ceropegia, there are a lot of orchid species like Habinerias grown in this species, in this habitats in grassland ecosystem. So productivity of a grassland is simply staggering, and they are foundation of which the life flourishes. But to protect uh, from this uh, from herbivore, grasses has developed a defense mechanism. They started depositing silica deposition on their leaf. It is often called as a phytolith, which becomes very difficult for herbivores to eat those grasses. Um, Among all these grasses, there are like many grasses are very important apart from their economical importance and ecological importance. So one grass species which I want to discuss here, it's Cynodon dactylon, or in Marathi it is called Durva or Darbha. It is a very common species found in garden, uh, the cricket grounds, or lawn tennis ground. It is all made from this particular species. And this is also called as a pinch period fodder resource because there's a short studies which I will discuss here. this is how the cynodon look like, cynodon plant look like. So this study is basically from Orissa. There's one called the one forest wildlife sanctuary called Debrigad Wildlife Sanctuary, which is situated in a bank of Hirakud Dam. During summer period, peak summer, the grasslands and trees or any kind of green vegetation gets dry up, and there's a severe crisis of food shortage. But Cynodon dactylon, which is grown near the dried bank of this dam, they provide a food resource to all the herbivores present in this wildlife sanctuary. And apart from herbivores, it is observed as there are many species of birds also creating nest on it. So similar kind of studies were found in Kalagad Reserve, in Corbett Tiger Reserve, also in Periyar Tiger Reserve, also in Pench Tiger Reserve. Similar kind of observation were made. So apart from Cynodon dactylon, there's one more. There are many species which are very interesting, and I'd like to discuss here. So Hebardia heptanuron, maybe a lot of people have not heard of this name, but it's someone who is into field botany or know plants. It's categorized as a IUCN vulnerable species. It was known only from Jog Fall, which is in Karnataka. It grows on a rocky cliff like this, where it grows only in the monsoon period, where the in high altitude grasslands or in low altitude plateaus near coast. So this is a Glyphocloa forticulata, which is you will see in the Karst Plateau, which is very much famous for its flowers. But you can commonly you will see this species of grass, and it has incredible design on their glooms. Another species of Glyphoclova goensis, it is found in low altitude plateaus near coast of Maharashtra and Goa. This is a habitat, particular habitat. It is from Vengurla coast of Maharashtra near Malvan, and it has many more species associated with it, like Dymeria woodrowi, and then there's a Lepidagathus, lutea. These are all endemic species, endemic to Western Ghats, found in this habitat. Then there's one more very interesting group of generas, that is Trypagon, Oropatium, and Aerogrostella, where you can see where you can where they are grown in rocky surfaces or rocky cliffs, and all this maybe if someone is from Maharashtra, they may be if they are go on hill forts, you will see on this grasses growing on a very much huge cliffs, and they have a special modification on their route to survive on this particular habitat. So this is Trypagon mahendragiriensis, which is recently we have described and discovered as a new species from Orissa. It has found very interesting. We have found very interesting coexistence between different plant group. The white patches, what you can see is all lichens. So lichens, what they do, they grows on this rock surfaces and make a suitable habitat substrate for trypogons, and this particular species in Trypogon mahendragiriensis. So it grows in this mahendragiriensis grows in this lichens, and this species through several generation they accumulate soil and they form a layer. So this soil layer, this green thing you can see, that is moss. It comes and it started spreading, and eventually it create a new, totally entire new ecosystem, which give a good substratum to other plants group, like trees, and also very small trees or small shrubs. So this is how Trypogon mahendragiriensis look like, which we have described recently from Orissa. So this is another very interesting and rare species of grass. It's Themeda hookeri, which is only found in Sikkim, North Sikkim region. It has again very good ability to grow on a rock cliff. As if any one of you have visited or went to Himalayas or Sikkim Himalaya region, there the slopes are very steep, but this grass has managed to survive on this slopes. Similar kind of grass species is also found in Konkan region or Western Ghats of Maharashtra. That it is called Arthraxon jubatus. It's also grown on such steep slope of Western Ghats. It has a very long on, and again it belongs to very interesting and rare and endemic species, endemic genera of grass, that is Arthraxon. And this may be in many of the grasslands you will see. This is called heteropogon, which often their on gets stuck in your pant or on your dress or in your boot, on your boot. It's also called as a fire-loving grass because they have adapted their root system, their rhizomes, so much that it can tolerate forest fires. So whenever forest fires happens, this underground rhizomes they go dormant, and whenever the again rainfall starts, it start emerging and covers entire grassland with this. So that's all. There are many more species of grass, and it's fascinating adaptation and structure you will see in grasses, and that's why they are so much in number and in so much in quantity in term of species wise or genera wise. So anyone if want to identify them or take up as a research for this group as a research, then they can go through this very popular literature. This book on grasses of Burma, Ceylon, India, and Pakistan came in 1960, and the author of this book was N.L. Bore, Dr. N.L. Bore. He was a he was a he worked in a Kew Garden, botanical garden in London. So for several years before moving to Kew, he worked in India, especially in Assam region, as a forest officer, where he developed the interest in grasses, and eventually he book on grasses, which till now is considered as a Bible for grass identification in India. Recently, there are many publications came out on a regional grass flora by botanical surf India, like flora of Tamil Nadu grasses, then flora of Kerala grasses. For Maharashtra, there is the grasses of Maharashtra by Shivaji University, the team led by S.R. Yadav, Professor S.R. Yadav, and also there's grasses of Junnar. Junnar is a very small uh, this thing taluk in Pune district of Maharashtra. It's also a very important grass literature. Apart from that, there are many more such kind of books which term as a fascicles by Botanical Surf India. And there's one more important species, important uh, grass book that is called Bibliography of Indian Poesy, where all kind of research papers, books related to Indian grasses is found in this book. And there is also a very helpful uh, website created by Kew Botanical Garden, where they have listed all the genera and all the species belonging to family Poaceae, and they have very good interactive keys to identify with using very simple morphological characters. So that's it. This was my presentation. This was my talk about grasses. Hello, Gauri.
Yes, Alok.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a
So,
minute. Just a minute. So that was really wonderful presentation, Dr. Alok. We do have few questions. Also, if somebody has many questions or any other question that are not asked so far, you can ask them in the chat box. Our first question was red, black, and blue rice. What are they, and how do they get the color from? And any different nutritional value that they have?
yeah, these all are cultivar, different cultivars as I told you, like basmati rice or Indrayani rice. They are like all kind of cultivars. Black rice, which is found in northeastern state, they have different nutritive value. Uh, as I said, there are historically we had many more cultivars species found in India, where some were like drought resistant, which grows on hills. Some species were grown in a saline ecosystem or saline water, like in Kerala, or flooded water. And it has they all are Oryza sativa, uh, and if it's grown in India, they're all indica variety, but they all are different cultivar. They have different nutritional value, and you can find more information on National Rice Research Institute, mm, which is in Cuttack, and there are many much more projects going on to conserve all this endemic and indigenous rice cultivars by private people also in various part of India. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, thank you. Another question was, what is upmixis phenomena found in grasses?
Nexus phenomena.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any idea of this. Maybe we can, it's like, mm, we'll talk about morphology or like ecological, like economical
Yeah, because we have
importance.
already spoken about non-vegetative reproduction
Mm-hmm.
that happens in grasses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like with runners
Um,
and with rhizomes or below ground
Right,
bird
right.
bank.
Yeah, another question from me actually. Any advice that you would like to give to all youngsters that are into research and who are actually studying botany and taking botany seriously? Any what
Grass
you say?
specifically, or like it is
Specific to
only
grasses and the research that the opportunities that they have.
there is an incredible opportunity in university level or institution where you can take your research in taxonomic, uh, like there are many morphological taxonomy or considered as a, and again there's a advanced studies consist of DNA studies of all these grasses or angiosperm species. And now there's a lot of whole genome study also going on in grasses also, because they have a lot of species of like a lot of species shows incredible diversity, incredible uh, characteristic to grow in saline ecosystem or in drought ecosystem, or they grow on rocky surfaces. So this gene can be used for in future they can be used in our crop plants. So yeah, whole genome study is also going on. So there are a number of even grassland ecosystem study of a grassland ecosystem is another kind of study they can undertake
Okay.
for taxonomic purpose of you can uh, like you can start with studying herbarium or collecting grasses from different part of India.
Okay. Okay. So there is a lot of opportunity and lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Even
In grasses also, and
right,
even
right,
in angiosperm
right.
taxonomy, you can do it.
Yeah, good. So all youngsters who are listening, I'm sure that by this time you must have come to know that there is a lot of opportunity to learn, to explore in this field. So do come, do join botany, do take botany seriously, and do a great research ahead. There's another question. What grass varieties can be grown in the shade?
There are many species like cyanodactylon or vidarbha or this durva in Marathi it is called. So it grows in shady shades. Then there
Oh,
is uh, then pseudo there are many species, then your Xanthotheca, there's one more grass species which is grown which is uh, uh, grow in shady habitats. So yeah, many species can be grown in shady habitats.
okay, okay. Any species that can we can plant along the say uh, a waterlogged area? Like sometimes we do get this questions from many people. Like we have some
Waterlogged
some
area
stagnant
is
water or
mm, like in saline ecosystem, as I was told, that Aloeropus lagopoidus, it's very, it can be grown there. It forms a mat,
right.
so easily it will cover a lot of space, particularly marshy area. And then there's a Zoysia matrila, which are also grown in marshy habitats and mangrove ecosystem.
Okay.
So again, and then there's a Hygrorhiza aristata, which is a floating grass. It has a modification in the rhizomes to float on water. So again, it can be this all the species can be uh, grown in water or in
Okay.
stagnant ecosystem. stagnant waters.
Okay. One question about the lifespan of grasses.
Lifespan of grasses, certainly it is very varied. Some species are annuals, so they are only live during during monsoon season, and many of the species, particularly of grassland ecosystem, they are perennial. They have underground rhizomes, which uh, goes dormant in harsh and dry and hotter uh, season, and they produce birds in end of the growing season, and they become dormant. It is also called as a below ground bird banks. uh,
Right.
Yes, and again, bamboo, again, if you consider bamboo, they have very long duration, lifespan. Some species, they are around 30 years, they grow, some species 60 years, and some species grows up to
Right.
around
Right.
100 years also.
One question about the, somebody wants to emphasize you more on the ecological aspects of grasses.
Yeah, ecological means, see, ecologically, those grasslands or grasses, they provide very much good ecosystem services, like soil conservation or habitat for many rare plants and animals, even carbon sequestration, uh, because of their limited or very short span of time, and incredible ability to produce food, and they have various adaptation uh, to uh, uh, grow on this grassland ecosystems, and they produce on the spikelets produce on, which ultimately use in dispersal. And the grassland ecosystem are often neglected one and considered as a degraded, but actually it is very diverse. As I told, we have around 300 species, more than 300 species of grasses, which is endemic to India. So yeah, ecologically, it's very important,
Oh,
grasses.
yeah. And yeah, there is general, tell us more about general account on desert area grasses. And there is one more question. What about their role in prediction of future vegetation?
Okay. So desert, I'm sorry, because I've worked in peninsular India and Western Ghats or Eastern Ghats. So desert, I've not studied, so I'm not a good person to talk about desert species or desert grasses. But yeah, there are many more people like Dr. Chandan Singh Purohit, which is a scientist in BSI. He has studied desert grasses and can tell you about more about desert grasses. Um, and yeah, vegetation. What may be their role in prediction of future vegetation? Uh, I, I don't know what this question means,
Probably
but
it is because grasses they grow almost in everywhere. That's what probably they could mean. So how does it help in maybe germination of other plant seeds or something like that? If they create some sort of
yeah,
bed.
that's what
Yeah.
all this grassland ecosystem are very dynamic. ecosystem.
Right.
There are many species other than grasses like Fabaceae members or legumes member, which provides nutrient, mostly nitrogen fixation they do, and they give a nutrient to soil, to grasses. And there are many species of acacia or like, for example, if we consider grasslands of like Peninsular India, we can classify them as a broadleaf savanna grassland where we have
Yeah, hello.
hello.
Yes, I was not able to hear you.
Yeah, it's again. Can you hear me again? Yeah, hello.
I guess it
Hello.
was only a problem with me. So, but
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry for this interruption. So basically, yeah, again, the savanna grasslands, if you talk about Peninsular India, the broadleaf broadleaf tree species grown in this ecosystem are mostly terminalias or tectona. They are all deciduous grass species, deciduous tree species,
Perfect.
and they can be called as a broadleaf savanna grassland, and they're always very dynamic uh, ecosystem, whereas in peninsula, in northern part or western part, like in Rajasthan, they are all we can call it as a fine leaf savanna grassland, which is often consists of uh, fine leaf trees, deciduous trees like are anogesis and acacias. They all are fine leaf, and that's why it's classified as a fine leaf savanna grasslands.
Okay. Uh, okay, I had two more questions, and then I'm going to request Shreya to unmute Dr. Chandan Singh Purohit. He is with us today. He had some one question.
Okay,
But
okay. I
before
will
that,
do
I
that.
would like to ask two questions from our participant. Yeah, Shreya will do that
Yes, I will
later.
do
But
that.
first, two questions. Uh, see, there are, as we
So
say,
I like to if we have a time, I like to take one more question
yes.
from Shailaja Tripathi.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask her question only.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, there's one more
Then
question in line after that. So we take
then
these two questions, and then I'll request Dr. Chandan to ask his question. See, generally that they say that grasses, they are most adaptable species in plants. So why there are some grasses that are still there in IUCN Red List? That is question number one. So you ask that first, then we will ask the another one.
Yeah, but this evolution or adaptation, it's not like for several years.
Right.
It is like efforts of millions of years. And like I told you, Habardia heptanuran, which is IUCN red listed species as a vulnerable species, which is only found in the Western Ghats. So they have developed their roots, their habitat to grow on vertical cliffs of basaltic rocks of Western Ghats, and they are like and the water supply for this grasses for this grasses are from directly from the water seeping from the cliffs. So that's why there are many lot of species of grasses in India or in world, but every species have their ecological niche, and they grow in specific ecosystem. That's why this habitats becomes very important, very critical to conserve and to conserve this species. We have to conserve this habitat also. Like if we talk about Western Ghats, then certainly all these mountains, Western Ghats hills are important to conserve endemic genera like Glyphoclovar, Hubardia, and as I told you, Temeda saxicolova, which is found in particularly on one hill in Eastern Ghats. If it undergoes uh, degradation by stone mining, then ultimately will lose the only habitat which or only place where this grass species grow. So yeah, so this ecosystem or this particular habitat also conserving this habitat is also very crucial to conserve this rare and IUCN red listed species.
Right. Good. So one question, are the desert-based grasses having some specific properties like higher angiospermic plants? And are these having some specific ecological modifications?
Yeah, desert.
The last question in
Desert again, desert grasses. They have underground rhizomes. Uh, then they have incredible diversity to absorb whatever moisture available in surrounding or in soil, and very fast fast mechanism to produce flower and then pollination and then dispersal of seeds by creating awns or bristles on their spikelets so that it can be covered longer distance, like for example Aristida, and rhizomes like Panicum turgidum, which grows in very deep desert, where its rhizomes goes very it forms mat underground, and that's how they can produce new plantlet from these rhizomes.
right. Yeah, I think now Shreya, if you can unmute Dr. Chandan Singh Purohit. Um, uh, Friends, he will be conducting one session on 30th of May, that is Saturday. So do join us for that lecture as well. It is going to be very interesting. We will be speaking about the phytodiversity in higher mountains in Sikkim. Especially, it will focus on the rhododendron wildlife sanctuary in Sikkim. So do join us for that. Yes, sir. Over to you.
Hello, can
Yes,
you hear?
Yes.
Yes, hello, hello. Such a nice
thank you,
presentation.
sir.
I want to just one little
Yes, yes.
clarification. In the slide of Eleuropus lagopoides, you say that this grass is growing in the dry dry area near the dam.
Hello.
But during the survey of 2019 to
Mm-hmm.
2015 in the Indian
Mm-hmm.
desert, we found three natural localities
Okay.
in the Indian
Mm-hmm.
desert like Bikaner, Jaisalmer.
Okay.
So I just want to one little clarification. Can these
Mm-hmm.
coastal vegetation
Mm-hmm.
grasses may be found in other than coastal region?
Yeah, by matlab, like this grass is found in mangrove ecosystem or in mud flats, but they actually are very much salt tolerant. Maybe desert ecosystem or mangrove ecosystem physiologically, if you see, can be very similar because the physiological water requirement to grow this plant is very less, whether it's in saline, marshy habitats like mud flats, or in desert ecosystem. So it can be maybe this species found in desert also, and in mud flats also, in saline ecosystem. So
Thank
maybe,
you.
but maybe there should be a more ecological studies on their ability to adapt in such a diverse ecosystem.
Thank you.
Hello, Gauri.
Sorry, yeah, I kept my microphone on mute mode. Sorry for that. I would like to thank Dr. Chandan for giving some time for listening our presentation. And as I said to all your friends earlier, that please join us for our next session as well. And it was a very good presentation, Alok.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And you've answered all the questions really nicely.
Mm.
And yes, all the participants as well, they were very interesting, very interested in this topic, and some of you have come up with really good questions. So that was fantastic. Our next session is going to be on the insect interaction, that will be led by Dr. Amol Patwardhan on Thursday. After that, we will be having another session by Dr. Chandan Singh Purohit, who just interacted with us on 30th of May. So, if you have any questions, any queries, even after this, please you can email it to us on the email ID provided there, oikoessence@gmail.com. And please feel free to ask any question regarding biodiversity and the conservation. On this note, I would like to thank you again, and I think we will conclude this lecture. Dr. Alok, you want to say something?
No, thank you very much. This opportunity, and very I can see very interesting group of participants have really asked a lot of intriguing questions, and they certainly have will again motivate me to study grasses in different way, the way the questions came from participants. Yeah, again, like if anyone want to do research in grasses, or they have a problem in identification of grasses, so they can contact me directly, or you can take a email ID from Gauri, and you can send me pictures about of grasses to identify them. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to me.
Yes, I think we'll end the session here. Thank you all and have a good night. Bye bye.